Welcome to Aims and Ideas. Subscribe now to get your news, information, and facts.
Welcome to the deep dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of the story. We take all this information, pull out what really matters, and make sure you leave understanding it fast. Today, we're looking at an event that, well, it had the whole world watching. A really high-stakes meeting, you could almost feel the hope, but also definitely this lingering kind of unsettling uncertainty.
Uh-huh.
We are talking, of course, about the Trump-Putin Summit. Happened in Anchorage, Alaska, just now, August 16th, 2025. And just so you know, this whole deep dive, it's based on a really insightful article called Hope and Uncertainty in the Alaskan Air, the Trump-Putin Summit and the Unresolved Ukrainian Crisis. It was published by Aims and Ideas.
That's right. And this deep dive itself, bringing you these key insights, is presented by Aims and Ideas. Our goal today really is to unpack what was actually said, those cautious statements coming out of the summit.
Right.
We want to dig into the leaders' perspectives. They were quite different, and try to understand Ukraine's position in all this, which is, frankly, incredibly vulnerable. And we also need to look at the bigger picture, the broader global stuff that sometimes gets lost when these big meetings happen. There's a lot going on beneath the surface here.
Okay, so let's get into it. The doors close, they talk for hours, they come out.
Yeah.
What was the immediate feeling? The first takeaway from this, pretty monumental meeting. I mean, this is the first time Trump and Putin had sat down face-to-face in, over 4 years, at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. And the backdrop, obviously, is just the devastating war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
The headline seemed to be cautious optimism, but like you said, with a huge asterisk. We've got to talk, but no actual breakthrough, no ceasefire, nothing concrete. Is that basically it? Optics over real results?
That sums it up pretty well, yeah.
Yeah.
That phrase, cautiously optimistic statements, it does capture the mood, but it papers over some big gaps. What wasn't said is almost more important than what was. There was no clear, tangible roadmap for peace, not even a basic ceasefire agreement. So despite the somewhat positive spin the sources were drawing on, they make it crystal clear that Ukraine's core issues, its sovereignty, its territory, they're still shrouded in considerable uncertainty. So yeah, maybe dialogue itself is a small step away from, worse escalation. But the fundamental problems, still very much there. It felt like the start of a conversation, maybe, not the end.
It really is amazing, isn't it, how two leaders can emerge from the same room and paint such different pictures.
Yeah.
You had President Trump speaking to the press after, nearly 3 hours behind closed doors?
Yeah, quite a long time.
And he came out with that, characteristic mix of confidence almost, anticipation. He was talking of great progress, called it a tremendous meeting. He said they made substantial headway. Especially, and he specifically mentioned concerning the very sad situation in Ukraine. Very much the deal-maker persona.
Mm-hmm. The classic Trump approach.
Yeah, he really pushed his long-held idea that he can broker the deal. He said something like, "I've always said I can get a deal done, and I still feel that way."
Mm-hmm.
He felt they understand each other perhaps better now. And then later, apparently, someone asked him how it went, and he just said 10 out of 10.
Wow, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Quite the declaration, right? Really hammering home that idea of momentum, of personal success. And he also said right away he planned to personally brief President Zelensky of Ukraine. Almost like, here's the deal I made.
Right. And then you contrast that with President Putin. His statement after the summit felt, much more measured, strategically nuanced, you could say. He called the talks constructive, businesslike, and ultimately useful. Very standard diplomatic language. No 10 out of 10 there.
Definitely not.
And while he acknowledged the Ukraine crisis is complex, Putin really seemed to emphasize the need for a comprehensive view. He said they discussed not just the fighting now, but also the reasons that led to this conflict and possible ways towards resolving it.
Okay, the reasons. What does that mean in practice?
Well, crucially, he doubled down on Russia's long-standing position regarding what it sees as the root causes. He explicitly brought up the security architecture in Europe and the legitimate concerns of the Russian Federation. And anyone following this knows that emphasis on root causes is basically code. It means Russia's opposition to NATO expanding eastward and its desire for Ukraine to be neutral, maybe even demilitarized.
Right, the buffer state idea.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating, I think, is that Putin mentioned certain understandings were reached, but he gave zero specifics, just said they needed further deliberation and engagement with all relevant parties. Very different vibe.
So you've got Trump aiming for a quick win, a 10 out of 10 deal. And Putin talking about these huge foundational security issues that go way back. I mean, does that just set them up for failure? Is it even possible to find a concrete path when they seem to be on such different pages?
That's a really sharp point. It feels like a fundamental mismatch, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have one leader, Trump, who seems to view diplomacy almost like a business transaction, a problem you solve quickly, make a deal, move on. And then you have Putin, who sees it through this much longer lens of, historical grievance, long-term strategy, reshaping the whole European setup.
Right.
When Putin talks about security architecture, that's not just rhetoric. It's a demand for, potentially, a complete overhaul of how Europe's been structured since the Cold War ended.
So Trump's 10 out of 10 might just be about, hey, we talked.
It could be. It could be about perceived success and just getting that dialogue going. But Putin's careful wording, his lack of specifics, his mention of needing all relevant parties involved, it suggests he's playing a much longer game, maybe just waiting, seeing what happens next. It really highlights the massive gap that still exists under those cautiously optimistic statements. It's not just about Ukraine's borders right now. It's about these fundamentally opposing visions for Europe.
Which brings us to, well, the elephant not in the room, maybe, Ukraine itself. They weren't at the Alaska summit. And that's got to be causing huge anxiety in Kyiv, right? Just watching from the sidelines.
Absolutely. There's a mix of anxiety and just cautious observation coming out of Kyiv.
President Zelensky is scheduled to meet Trump in Washington on Monday, which is obviously crucial.
Mm-hmm. Very important meeting.
But still, the fact that these two major powers spend hours talking about Ukraine's future without anyone from Ukraine actually there, it raises serious questions about Kyiv's agency, its ability to shape what happens next. It feels like they're being talked about, not talked with.
And that hits the nail on the head. That's precisely the deep concern in Kyiv. The initial reactions we're seeing from Ukrainian officials, very guarded. And there's a real fear, the source material highlights this, that some voices in Ukraine worry that any push for a swift resolution by the big players might come at Ukraine's expense.
You mean sacrificing territory or sovereignty for a quick deal?
Exactly. That's the fear, that concessions might be made, compromises discussed behind closed doors. History hasn't always been kind to smaller nations when larger powers make deals over their heads.
Yeah.
And the lack of transparency after the summit just fuels that speculation. Trump says, great progress. Putin talks about understandings. But what are they? Kyiv is left guessing.
That puts them in a really tough spot.
It's incredibly precarious. They're trying to figure out what was discussed, what might have been agreed, even tentatively, and what expectations were set for them, especially regarding their borders, their future alignment, West or neutral. Ukraine's entire future really hangs on the details of whatever progress Trump and Putin alluded to. And crucially, whether those talks actually address Ukraine's fundamental interests, its right to choose its own path, its right to exist within secure borders.
Which makes that Zelensky-Trump meeting on Monday absolutely pivotal.
Absolutely critical. It's Kyiv's chance to get its voice heard directly, to push back against any narrative set in Alaska that doesn't align with their interests, and hopefully shape whatever comes next. They need to make sure any solution isn't just handed down to them.
Okay. And, while all eyes were glued to Anchorage, the world kept spinning. Other major things were happening that often get overshadowed, but they're part of the same complex global picture, aren't they?
Definitely. These things don't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah, but let's just touch on a few mentioned in our source material. They really show how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
Even while one crisis grabs the headlines, others are demanding serious attention. Like, for example, the Air Canada strike. That's still going on, right? The 2025 strike?
Still ongoing, yes.
Over 10,000 flight attendants out. It's apparently in a critical phase, causing huge travel chaos, not just in Canada, but internationally, too. People trying to get around. It's a mess.
Significant disruptions.
Negotiations seem stalled. Travelers are basically being told, good luck, check your flights constantly. The economic impact of that, even just a labor dispute, it ripples outwards.
It really does. And it's a reminder that while leaders are doing high-level diplomacy, other crises are hitting people very directly, demanding resources and attention, like the awful South Asia floods this year. 2025. The monsoon season has just been catastrophic in parts of Pakistan and India, especially on Kashmir.
Yeah, the scale sounds devastating.
It's staggering. Hundreds reported dead, huge numbers of people displaced, infrastructure just wiped out. There are urgent flood relief efforts happening right now trying to cope with the immediate aftermath. And it's critical in affected parts of India, too. It needs massive humanitarian aid.
Just heartbreaking.
And these aren't just local disasters. They put immense strain on global aid systems, pulling focus and funds that are already stretched thin.
And then there's Gaza, a crisis that just seems to grind on and on, often out of the headlines, but getting worse.
That's right. The humanitarian situation there is deteriorating rapidly. The UN is putting out increasingly stark warnings about widespread malnutrition. We're talking about populations on the verge of famine.
Why is it so bad right now?
Well, the sources point to the familiar, tragic reasons. Heavy restrictions on essential supplies getting in, plus the ongoing devastating impact of the conflict itself. So there's this urgent call, again, for more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza, but also, critically, for some kind of sustainable resolution to the conflict that traps people in this cycle.
It's just relentless.
And if you connect these dots, this major strike impacting global travel, these horrific floods, this escalating humanitarian emergency in Gaza, they all paint a picture of a world facing multiple intense challenges simultaneously.
Right.
So while the focus might be on a summit like Trump-Putin, these other events are shaping the landscape too. They underscore just how much need there is for international cooperation, for resources, for sustained attention across the board. It shows the geopolitical stage isn't simple, it's complex and under pressure from many sides.
So, bring it back to the summit, then. Where does this leave us? The bottom line seems to be, according to the Aims and Ideas article, that the Trump-Putin meeting was, well, a significant step maybe, but a very tentative one.
Tentative's a good word for it.
Yeah. No concrete deals, these clashing perspectives between the leaders, the sheer complexity of the whole situation.
Yeah.
It means the future, especially for Ukraine, is still incredibly uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
The world is basically waiting now, right? Waiting for more details, especially from that upcoming Trump-Zelensky meeting.
Yeah.
That feels like the next big moment to watch.
It absolutely is. And it reinforces that understanding these interconnected challenges, conflict, disasters, humanitarian crises, it takes urgent, concerted international effort. It's not just one meeting, it's how it fits into this huge, dynamic global system. And maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to sort of chew on. You have Putin focusing on these deep root causes, right? And Trump pushing hard for a deal. Given that, how might the fact that Ukraine wasn't even at that first big meeting in Alaska, how might that absence actually shape whatever path comes next? Could it, maybe unintentionally, just drag out the uncertainty for Kyiv, or even risk leading to a resolution that doesn't truly serve the country at the very center of it all?
That's a really sobering and important question to end on. Lots to think about there. This deep dive, as we mentioned, drew its insights from material provided by Aims and Ideas and was presented by Aims and Ideas. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time with another look at the information that matters.